to dive into what it truly takes to connect with audiences in a world where we are scrolling faster than ideas can land. So welcome to Amazon MX Player presents Ignite the Evolution. Beyond the 20-second ad window, how can we craft meaningful brand moments in the attention economy? How can we craft moments that stick? How can we create stories that matter and content that manages to cut through the noise? So get ready to hear from the minds that are reimagining storytelling and rethinking platforms. And we're definitely going to make sure that it's a conversation that is as relevant as revealing. So let's welcome our panelists onto our stage. So let's welcome Kanika Anand, GM Media for Airtel. Please put your hands together. Hi. We also have with us Rashmi Sehgal, Chief Digital and Transformation Officer at Zenith. All right, and while she comes and joins us, good afternoon, ma'am. Let's also welcome onto our stage, hi Rashmi. Please give her a round of applause. Thank you. Let's welcome onto our stage, Ajay Mehta, Head Content and Creative Services, Group M. And joining them, folks, as the moderator and leading the conversation for us, put your hands together for Yash Chopra, Head of Video Ad Sales, Amazon Ads.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction. Hi. Welcome, folks. We're excited to have all of us here and talking on a very, very interesting topic, something that's close to the four of us, and I think has a lot of relevance for the broader industry at whole. I think we're living in times where essentially the bombardment of advertising and the fragmentation of media has increased so much that with the thousands of ad messages that you get to see every single day, as a brand, what you are unclear about on what's having impact and what's really, really driving improvement in mental availability, salience, and so on. And I think what we're going to spend some time today discussing is how's the ecosystem evolved to a place where while the 20-second, as we traditionally call it, is extremely relevant, but there are a whole lot of other elements that have come in which probably enhance the relevance of the 20-seconder and help drive mind measures a lot more significantly. Today, I have a very, very interesting panel with me. I have Ajay Mehta, who leads branded content and creative services at Group M. I have Rashmi Sehgal, who leads digital transformation at Zenith. And I have Kanika Anand from Airtel, who's driving marketing innovation at one of the country's largest telco brands. Welcome, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start it right from the crux. We're getting to a space where media has become extremely, extremely fragmented. Decisions on what to do, how to do stuff are becoming more complex. Touch points are increasing, platforms are proliferating. How do you see your roles as marketeers, as planners, transformers, and for you, Ajay, from a creative and content services lens, play out, and how do you see the ecosystem evolving in the context of what we're discussing today?
So I think it's becoming extremely challenging because there are so many choices. Earlier, there used to be like a fixed timetable, the time slots were fixed. People were in one room. But today, all of us are with different screens, watching different content. So I think it's becoming even more fragmented, and the reach now, no more, just the reach may not help. So it's also about relevance. So you can keep on building reach, but if you're not relevantly present there, then it may not help the brand. And earlier also, there were ads which were, you couldn't skip them. Now you have a possibility to skip them. So the low memorability, etc., tends to creep in. So I think there's a big challenge out there from that aspect.
And like you rightly said, it's about different platforms, different screens. Also, the attentive time span has started to go down. So that's another challenge to add to that. So it's becoming difficult, and therefore the importance of actually planning, which actually covers multiple touch points, which covers multiple areas. Also to look at the kind of content. So you spoke about the relevance. So therefore to look at the kind of content, look at the kind of context has become really important. So to move away from what erstwhile was a platform out planning, to move to an audience level planning is becoming really, really important.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you touched upon the fact that there is a huge explosion in media, right? I mean, look at the number of platforms available to each one of us to actually consume advertising and content. And I think the beauty is that for each one of us, there's something to see and consume, right? In our organization, we keep saying that, and I was telling you the same thing, that if you look at formats, like we had the age-old 30-seconders or 20-seconders. We have 3-seconders. We have 3-minuters available for us. We have 30-minuters shows that we can look at. 3-hour movies are there. You can also look at 3 months of IPL for activating a brand. So the choices available for brand managers and for marketers is plenty. In fact, I think it's a challenge for them to decide where to put their money, right? But in my role in our field from a content standpoint, I think it's the best time to be, because you have so many more options to take to client, and have these conversations that how do you go beyond just the traditional means of 20-seconders and 30-seconders. That's where the fun is. I don't think we are sitting to consume ad inventory or only advertising. I think in my opinion, I would love to skip it and move ahead. It's like in our world we say interrupt content and advertising. I think the more options you have to seamlessly talk to a consumer with content that's available or created for a brand, I think that's the way to go. I mean, that's the way I look at it. That's what's happening in the industry right now.
I think that's interesting, Ajay. I think, and I just want to come back to you, Kanika, on this, right? As a marketer, given what Ajay spoke about, how do you think the two pieces, which is your core traditional 20-seconder, whether it's a 10, 20, 30-seconder, how does that work in complementary nature with what Ajay spoke about? Do you see that as playing out to be complementary? Are you all tone in how you think about these two pieces in parallel?
I think what Ajay said, yes, it's extremely become more complementing in nature, because standalone advertising may not help. Like pure play or 30-seconder, 20-seconder ad may not gel up well, because there are so many options. Now you're looking at content in so many other ways, and each of one of us is looking at differently. What is also essential is that now contextualization has become extremely important. Even personalization. So now no more a brand. When we are thinking of an ad, we are thinking not from one TVC which rolls out to every other platform. We are also thinking platform specific thinking, like from an OTT aspect to meta asset, all the video streaming platforms may have something very different playing out, because that's how the consumer is also viewing it. So the lens is changing definitely, and there's a transition happening there.
Rashmi, since you're closer to the ecosystem and have a wider view of this from an advertiser standpoint, do you see a conscious choice or a conscious debate that is happening around this actively? Or is this, and I'll come to you on this, Ajay, a little later, but is this in the conscious, or it used to be in the space where everything started with the 20-seconder, and whenever the term innovation was thought of, you thought of doing that, what else can you do? Do you see from that point of where we were to where we are now, things moving as this becoming an important part of everything that you do in terms of planning?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, I mean, we've moved to an audience thinking, planning, and it's not just about the asset, it's about the placement. So you actually think about where these audiences are going to go, what is the intent, what is the context and the content, right? And from there, you start building an omni-channel journeys. And that's where, just to quote an example, if I know that for one of my categories where in my brand journey, I really need to start converting, right? So a perfect example is that if I start looking at Amazon audiences, I know they're in category, I can convert them. That's a format. Secondly, if a brand wants to actually look at engagement, the Amazon MX Player immersive formats that actually let you not just look at the ad, but also actually engage with those formats, and they're shoppable, right? So some of these formats that have come in really allow for full funnel journeys. And the last piece I think I'll talk about is we all know creator ecosystem just from a link to influencers, but creators, when it comes to the originals that happen on the OTTs, the shoulder content that gets created actually also is a space that's exploding. And that's a space that brands can tap in no matter at what journey or what objective that they have.
Awesome. Ajay,
For
since you're the
me,
closest to this, how do you
see, I look at it very differently. I mean, they obviously look at it from an audience, and there's a lot of planning science that goes into play. But at times we look at gut, right? Any creative person you ask here will say they know the brand pretty well, they know the tonality pretty well. You'll create content, or rather, you'll find the right fitment with the right show or a movie or whatever it could be. But for me, I think both, we're not saying that 20 and 30 is dying, right? It goes hand in hand. The difference is if I do a show, and we've done stuff with Amazon Prime and MX, the advantage we have is we can ride on the content that you guys create, right? Any brand can. So even if I associate with a show, we create a 20-second cut from your show, that plays to the brand's advantage. So one is there's a pull factor because I know a new show is coming into play. And what better than having a beauty brand associating with a show that's with maybe a marriage or a rom-com sort of a script, and create using your protagonist, using your storyline, fitting back to the brand story, and then creating assets with that. I think there's a beauty in that. Of course, advertising is here to stay. We all know that's never going to change, and that's the core of the whole thing. We all have learned it from that world. But I think there's a lot of opportunity beyond doing the regular, typical, functional advertising, and looking at avenues like Prime and MX to pick up your shows, pick up your stories, which you know are going to fly, and then create assets around that and deploy them on social or on your platform or on other platforms as well. I think that's the shift that we see. And a lot of brand teams and marketers are talking about that. When you walk into a room, they're like, don't tell me only about the plain Jane print, radio, and TV. Give me something else. And even in this format, when you tie up with your shows, we can create the whole 360 surround. No one is stopping us to do print, radio, outdoor. But I think this is far more compelling when you are actually there in a show or in an environment where the consumer is actually hooked onto it. So if I'm watching a show which is maybe 10 episodic or 15 episodic or 5 episodes, you know he's going to come back. So being part of that cult or that culture makes a big difference in my opinion. So yes, I mean, I think 20 seconds, 30 seconds here to stay, but they all go hand in hand. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll come to you, Kanika. How does this play out in terms of a lot of this decision making and movement is also platform dependent on how platforms have evolved and consequently how they've impacted consumer behavior, right? So when you keep that in context, right, and make these decisions, what are the variables that you're then consciously keeping in mind to make that decision, and how does this then play in to your decision making?
So, as I mentioned earlier, that all the platforms are viewed by different consumers from a different aspect or a lens. Therefore, we are curating very differently the assets. As a marketer, now it's no more a job that I can do one asset and I can deploy it everywhere. That's not the job. So I'm making platform-specific assets, which are also now not just that from an aspect, it also covers, say, the imagery changes, the local nuance gets added. Then even the tone that I'm talking, that changes. So all of those variances are getting added up there when we are making platform-specific assets. And just to give you an example on how, since we were earlier talking about 20-seconder, 30-seconder and complementing the assets as well, the other thing I want to point out is that beyond vanilla advertising, like we all need to go a little beyond that, and innovations has become like part of the plan. Earlier, part of the mix could be say a 5%, but today I need to dial up that because a 5% won't help me. I need to do a delta of say 15 to 20% to be visible and be seen. Otherwise, I'm lost in the clutter. So therefore, we are defying the usual principles and doing innovations and stuff which can at least get me the eyeballs. So.
Got it. And when you get to planning on this, right, Rashmi, for you, how does the differentiation between snackable, really short-form content, long-form content, what Ajay mentioned about, right? There's pieces of content that keep going on for 8 weeks. There's a binge drop, long-form variety, and then there's really short-form content. How do you think about these separately, both in terms of pure play advertising opportunities and extending these two content opportunities?
Absolutely. Like Kanika also spoke, and I spoke about the whole omni-channel storytelling that actually goes out into saying that while I may have a 20-seconder, I need to also customize it to the context in which it's playing. So on short format platforms, I need a short format versus when I need to really go about building my brand, I will use long formats. For brands which are in it for long term, be it long format 3-hour series or be it actually creating an AFP is something that we look at considering. And for a long storytelling formats, AFPs work best, but that's something that brands really need to invest and continue year on year. Something that we started off with was the Mama Beautiful Indians concept, which is in year 3. So that's a commitment that brands make for a long-term storytelling because that's something that internalizes the concept of what they stand for. A recent one is when we started with the Johnny Walker Walkers List, which is about celebrating and collaborating with walkers from across different genres, sports, Virat Kohli, be it music, fashion, right? So these are AFPs that are created with a long-term storytelling and a long-term vision versus the formats versus the content integrations are more where you're looking at some of these lists for an immediate result. So that's how we kind of keep in consideration on when we are planning on what's the brand objective, therefore what's more suitable to meet that guideline.
Ajay, is that how you see this playing out as well when you speak to brands?
Sorry.
Is this how you see it playing out when you speak to brands as well, or there are nuances?
If you look at the starting point, right? I mean, of course, depends what in our world, the JTBD is, right? What's the job to be done? I think creating content for platforms is necessary. It could be, typically, you would say that if this is the core of the idea, how do you take it 360? So you have a platform which is, like in our world, they say that you can't avoid reels, right, as a format, because we jokingly try and say that, literally in a day, we feel people are actually swiping 70, 80 feet of content. And that's through the reel format, right? I mean, I personally, when I'm free, I'm only consuming reels. I'm sure Vineet is sitting here, he'll be laughing at me, but that's what I do. I mean, I enjoy watching reels. And if you look at reels as well as a format, or you look at the short form content, it's not content being created by publishers. It's actually created by creators. So that makes a big difference in how you're using creator content to your advantage. Similarly, if I create a show on Amazon or any other platform, I need to take that to the audience in different means. So do I do a filter-led, AR filter-led conversation on another platform? Do I create reels? Do I create influencer push that I would do, or create a 20-second asset? It all depends on the objective, where your audience is, what you want to communicate. And of course, it's not easy at times because finally there's only that much money on the table, right? But the advantage we have, and what I have seen is, at least unlike earlier, and I'm sure they'll agree that you would typically have to go to 5 platforms to create brief them individually. Like in our age-old world, creative agency को brief किया, PR को brief किया, सबको brief किया, बोला लेके आओ solutions. Here you can take the solution on a platter. So you have the solution in terms of creative or content. You have the media bunked into it. You have a measurement angle attached to it because you obviously need to show impact. You have the influencer world and then create formats from there. So I think if you see it holistically, and like I said, 360, all these things come into play. I mean, that's the way we would design a campaign for any brand.
Got it. Okay. And because you brought this piece in on how you look at formats and so on, if I were to bucket these pieces into maybe 3 or 4 broad buckets, when I look at this from this lens of driving engagement, and which in my head is a direct correlation to attention, how do you think about this in terms of creative formats that help you drive engagement, your normal advertising, which is your 20-seconder, etc., and to what Ajay was saying, that how do you look at then content which is either created, what you'd call as an AFP equivalent, or you'd think of it as integrations within a piece of content to drive to the same end state, which is how do you get more attention from the user and how do you build more salience, drive more engagement?
So I think in today's world, in the age of attention becoming difficult to capture from a consumer lens, the variables, the way I look at it is 2 parts. One is exposure elements and one is engagement. So the way I can break down exposure is, or prominence, however you want to call it, is what is the kind of surface that we are going to be present on. If it's streaming platform, then can I do some pause and play ads? Can I make it a split screen? So those are the kind of innovations which would, at least get me attention for some seconds. Even introducing simple things like Aston bands, L bands, those are the kind of formats, because what's happening on the streaming platforms is also we are viewing long form content more. When we are tuning into long form content, I don't want to get out the content and see ads. If I'm present in content and able to make a mark in the content during that time, at least I'm creating an ad which is more memorable. At least I'm able to land my brand. That is what the job of a marketer is. So I think that's an evolution that's happening. On the other side, from a creative lens also, there is a huge role play which is coming onto music being added to ads, or something which is different. Like, you want to, either the sounds are like that, or there's content which is based on humor. So that gets more attention. So even there is a lot of role play on creative out there. And beyond that, there's also things like clutter. So I don't want to be present if there's too much clutter. I want shorter ad spaces so that at least I'm visible. So those are the kind of matrices in my mind which try and gauge attention and able to draw, move the metrics for us. Yeah.
Yeah, agree. I think it's important that depending on the brand journey, it's a mix of some of these aspects, because while the 20-seconder is there, the way of engagement on the creatives, the way of actually delivery of the creatives is equally important, because while I'll have a short format for, say, different platforms, but when I'm looking at streaming service, like she said, right, it's not just about placing that ad, but it's also about the experience that I give to the consumer. Therefore, each of these actually give a different role and a different measurability to the overall planning. Ideally, we would like advertisers to consider all of these as they move into their journeys, but the priority tends to go to more of looking at the attention planning, that is identifying those right matrix within that, and then start building the surround when it comes to avoid this fragmentation that the consumer goes to.
So, Rashmi, I'll just double click on this. When you think about this from that planning standpoint, and going back to what Ajay was saying in terms of jobs to be done, how do you see the entire meshing happening where you're using this for a particular job to be done, and you're using your traditional video for a job to be done? and I'll come back to you, Kanika, on this, because this eventually then translates into that how do you see these being measured, and how do you quantify or qualify impact for any of these?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, measurement is really important. So what we tend to do is, depending on the brand's journey, if they're in the initial journey of a launch or making news, while we may use a bit of aspects of going on the 20-second or using different formats, but the integrations actually help you get that scale really faster. Therefore, it's about the kind of brand lifts that are coming in, the kind of recall that the consumers are being able to do when you're looking at some of these integrations. It quickly moves down the funnel to actually looking at shoppable ads, actually looking at immersive experiences where the consumer gets to know more about the brand's product, and also link it back to is there an intent to buy. So really some of these actually flow to the journey, ensuring that everything's measurable, not just from your standard media matrix, but what impacts the brand. Is it the brand health studies? Is it the searches that are increasing? If there's an integration, was the consumer being able to recall that? So some of these aspects actually help us make that case a little more stronger, and also add back to the brand and sales.
Yeah.
So on the measuring the anything that we do out there, especially in terms of anything which is more differentiated beyond the regular, I think what we are doing is, like Rashmi you said, we look at search volumes, we look at visits. Those are the real metrics we look at. But we also are looking at external studies, which are like third-party studies, and we are breaking down at each and every platform level. So it's not just about TV, but it's about cricket on TV. It's, or maybe on, OTT. It's about, what is the differentiated thing I did beyond a 30-seconder. That is also something that I'm measuring. So we last did a campaign last year around, which was very first OTT type of campaign, where we did ad tracking. So we really, what we did was that we hijacked the promos of all of these, newly launched web series, movies, etc. And all the notifications kind of came in from, that Airtel is offering you XYZ. So that's the kind of things that we intend to even measure beyond the 20 or a 30-seconder. And also chaser advertising, lots of differentiated stuff on formats. So we're breaking down all of them and trying to measure at each and every aspect of it. And honestly, we get the kind of responses that we're looking at, we get that. And therefore, we're able to continue or discontinue, and we test and experiment and decide the layout for us. Yeah.
See how important it is for us to prove that measurement to our advertisers.
And are there any learnings that either of you have on how this plays out for long-form content, binge watch long-form content versus short-form, and so on?
So, whatever tests we have done so far, long form definitely is adding more value versus short form, because short form is also more doom scrolling, right? You are just out there, maybe passive attention, but not active attention. So the way I can decipher even attention is three aspects. There's active, there's passive, and then there's no attention. And even adding to another layer of that is decay on attention. Like, literally after the 3 or the 5 seconds, you are tuned out of it. So it's long form because you are committed to it for an hour or half an hour. So there, the impact is stronger. But on short form, I don't see that happening for us. The way I look at short form is from the other aspect, that today influencers are adding that value there. But we have to talk about AFPs, all of that. That's happening on long format.
And just to add to that, if me, so what also happens is that while the long format works, what we see a lot with the immersive ad experiences, it tends to give about 6x the results, right? So it's really important, therefore, to keep a balance. And I think, like she rightly said, on the short format, it's really important to make content the king. So it's really important to, in the doom scrolling, really understand that behavior, the cues, to be able to feed that in. So that's it.
Ajay,
मेरे लिए बहुत simple है. I mean, see, when you walk into a client meeting and they are handing over a brief to you, what are they asking you here? And especially when it comes to content, not the traditional, they're saying, क्या impact होगा? very clearly they'll ask. And you're in the same boat as I am with Amazon and Prime and MX. It's not easy to convince someone to get money out of advertising money and put it directly onto a show, because show doesn't come cheap, right? I mean, it'll be 3x of the cost that you put behind an ad. So very clearly, the first question they'll ask is impact. Kya hai? Typically, content and the kind of stuff we do would cater to the top of the funnel, right? It's mainly awareness and affinity and reach or whatever you want to call it. But at the bottom of the funnel, that's the tricky one to crack. I was in a meeting yesterday at one of the top FMCG companies, and the question asked was that will it impact business? Now, when that question comes to you, you start thinking, will content really impact immediately? But there is a solution to that. It depends how you create the whole campaign around. For example, there are tons of examples to say top of the funnel. I mean, there's no brainer. She spoke about passive, active placement. You've seen on, the big bosses of the world and Ajahn shows that you see, brands visibly present over there. I think the trick is to land something which will have an impact across the funnel. So, for example, we did a show with Prime some time back, Made in Heaven. A beauty brand came up to us and said that this show is about marriages and a lot of masala. How we want to latch onto that show. The look and feel, tonality works for us, but can we connect that to commerce? Now, basically the brief is content to commerce, right? It's not easy. But the advantage you guys bring, and I don't know how many people think on those lines, if I have content coming out of a show on Amazon Prime or MX, I can connect that to Amazon.in. So in that case, we took the show, we latched onto it, we got some integrations happening, but the beauty was the brand created a marriage, a wedding pack or a hamper. We listed that on Amazon.in. We use your footage and your show, whatever that we got from y'all. You guys gave us about 150 odd influencers to push that content. Everything was clickable on digital. The moment someone saw a show promo, it ended to say that buy this wedding hamper for this look on Amazon.in. So that actually completes the whole, from awareness consideration to, and it's not easy from a conversion standpoint. I think that's the beauty the brands are looking for, because at the end of it, whether you do content on TV, you do it on digital, ROI is going to be in question.
Yeah.
So we need to think differently. She spoke about immersive content. There are so many opportunities and examples to see where you can engage an audience, right? You give them the power to choose a scene or the next step. It makes it more immersive and stickiness. So for me, I think the more sticky the content is, it'll either ways work in terms of awareness or bottom of the funnel. So that's the trick, if you ask me.
Okay. And if I just take this back to the earlier discussion that we were having, how do you see this playing out for you between long, short, and even in long form? You've got now a bunch of brands doing a lot of reality shows. In parallel, there are a lot of scripted shows that come in, and both offer very, very different opportunities, options, and the outcomes for the brand are very, very different. So if I go back to your JTBD's point, and I think of these as two separate buckets, how do you and your brands look at this?
See, I think we were discussing this earlier. It depends on what life cycle of the brand there is. Like I said, there are some brands who are really conservative. They'll talk reach and frequency. They will say 30 seconds and it ends over there. I walk out of the room. I know that brand is not going to spend money. But there are brands who are willing to engage and experience or experiment with content, right? Now, when it comes to content, of course, there are reality shows available. There are a lot of the fiction stuff available to us. You guys have a show called Rise and Fall that's coming in. I mean, these are great opportunities to get brands into the fold, passively, actively, placement kar sakte hain. The good thing is there is demand. I think we moved quite a bit. I moved in this role 10 years ago. We started the division then. I think today when we walk in the room, there is a conversation what beyond the 22nd, which means that where else will I go and see content? I think maximum content we are watching on OTTs like your platform, right? I mean, honestly, for me, when I go home on a weekend and we decide to watch a show, घर में गदर होता है. Between the kid, me and my wife, the first thing we don't know what to watch, right? And that's the beauty of the platform because there's so much for everyone. The other thing of content on an OTT is that there are brands reaching out and asking for Amazon and your other competition, right? Unfortunately, the others don't want to do it. You guys still are very open to doing integrations. I think there are brands asking to write shows for them. I think that's the real win. One is you look at shows, you find means to integrate. The others are, can you write shows for brands? And that's a little step earlier, right? I mean, that's like creating an IP for a brand. A lot of brands are asking for that. Whether it's a liquor brand, FMCG brands. One of the beauty brands reached out to us and said, talk to Amazon and get me a similar movie like Fashion to be released. I want my brand to sit in that movie, recreate the script, write it again, and put it up on the platform. Not easy to be done, huge investment, lead time to be done. But I think there's a lot of demand and conversation around long format. And like she said that, I think long format works. People enjoy watching it. And look at us, yeah, we all are working 9 to 7, 9 to 9, literally. फिर घर में जाके कुछ तो अच्छा देखेंगे. टीवी तो कोई देखता नहीं है. OTT देखते हैं आजकल, so it's a good thing, yeah.
Super. So before we close, I just wanted to get last thoughts from you all. Each one of you, we'll start with you, Kanika. We've had an interesting discussion on how things are evolving. He just touched upon what the life stage of different brands are. With all this context, how do you think the next year is likely to play out, or the next couple of years are likely to play out in terms of this balance?
Anika, you have to commit to do content, then I'll come and meet you. That's pending to be done. So you're on the other side, actually.
Yeah. So, see, I think it's very, very relevant for sure, and the relevance is only increasing. While there are brands like us who cannot commit, for long-term deals, and looking at, we are like in and out because we are a brand at a stature where I need to do campaigns only if I have a new news. Otherwise, it's all table stakes. So I don't really need to do anything. But then there I have categories like Wi-Fi, where my penetration is pretty low. So there I'm looking at more content which is ingrained. Then there are more things which are upcoming, which I cannot say out right now. But then we are evolving and launching newer products, which may need all of this. This is part of salience building for me. While your top funnel campaign could do a burst approach, it will come and it will go. But this needs to stay in longer because audiences are coming out, going in, coming out, etc. All of this is happening. So I think the role of AFPs, the role of in-content seeding, seamless integration, being part of the content becomes very, very important and critical for any marketer because otherwise I can't capture attention. Yeah.
Awesome.
I agree. I think it's just at the verge of now explosion with the opportunities that are increasing, and gone are the days where you only look at just placements, like you were sharing. The kind of opportunities on shoulder content, the co-creation is really huge. So I think it's just on the verge of exploding. Therefore, it's important that we look at it from the lens of finding what's really native on platforms to be able to capture that attention and try and tack that to a full measurement, to a full movement for the brand.
I think beyond, they've covered most of it. The next big opportunity, and I think it's already here, is regional space, right? We know that today, look at the Bollywood content. You're seeing more of South Indian stars in mainstream shows, and you guys have done it, right? So that border, those lines have blurred. And I think brands that struggle to reach, say, when you talk about Northeast, you talk about South, or you talk about the Hindi-speaking HSM belt, there's a lot of content available. And I think, the big studios, I don't want to name any, they've embraced South as such. Even North talent, look at Diljit, what he's doing. He's creating raves across and waves across the world as well. So I think regional play, and again, a platform like yours, which is so neutral, gives us the leeway to actually play with regional content. And I'm not talking about age-old translation and dubbing. I'm talking about really hard-coded content, which is built with those faces, insights coming in, nuances of that particular market. And that's something as a big opportunity that brands are seeking. So I think all of us in the business should look at that more seriously and try and create those opportunities for brands.
Yeah, we're looking at that as an opportunity very, very seriously because we fundamentally believe that the immersion that content provides and the undivided attention that it provides cannot be substituted by anything else. And consequently, even as we build, like you called out, that we're opening up to a whole lot of this because we believe that as things evolve over the next couple of years, this will become more front and center into how brands think and how brands would want to work. But thank you so much. Thank you, the three of you, for this lovely session, these insights. Thanks. I hope this was valuable for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.